Hey guys, Tucker here from Electric Cycle Rider. Today we're riding Specialized electric mountain bikes. I've got the 2020 Specialized Turbo Levo Expert Carbon, as well as the 2020 Specialized Turbo Levo SL Expert Carbon. So you've got two electric mountain bikes from the same manufacturer. Their ergonomics are very similar. They cost about the same amount of money, but the characteristics of these bikes are very different.
The Turbo Levo SL features the Specialized 1.1 motor that has a peak output of 240 watts, a 320 watt-hour battery, and it weighs in at 37 3/4 pounds. It's got the SRAM GX Eagle drivetrain, Fox 34 performance fork coming in at 150 millimeters, Fox DPS Elite shock also in 150 millimeters, and SRAM G2 RSC 4-piston brakes. In the medium that I'm riding, it's got 437 millimeter chainstays, a 66-degree head tube angle, a wheelbase of 1,185 millimeters, a stack of 606 millimeters, and a reach of 435 millimeters. The Turbo Levo features the Specialized 2.1 motor that has a peak output of 565 watts, a 700 watt-hour battery, and it weighs in at 46.5 pounds. It's got the SRAM X1 drivetrain, Fox 36 performance fork coming in at 150 millimeters, Fox DPS performance shock also in 150 millimeters, and SRAM Code R 4-piston brakes. In the medium that I'm riding, it's got 455 millimeter chainstays, a 66-degree head tube angle, a wheelbase of 1,202 millimeters, a stack of 606 millimeters, and a reach of 435 millimeters.
Now that you've got some of the technical specifications on these two bikes, let's get on the trail and see how they ride. All right guys, so starting out here with the Levo SL. So you immediately notice how light this bike is. I mean, it really just feels like I'm pedaling a normal mountain bike right now. I'm in eco mode, which is the first setting. Man, you know, it's hard without riding it right back to back, but I know I'm getting some assist. The bike's clearly a bit heavier than just a standard mountain bike, so it kind of feels like I'm just pedaling a mountain bike. If there's ever any argument that you can't work hard on an e-bike, I mean, I can feel it. I can feel it in my legs. Already getting a little winded. I mean, I'm up at like 10,000 feet right now. So naturally feel a little bit out of breath, but yeah, eco mode, just feel like I'm on a mountain bike. Shift up the trail here. So switching up the trail, now I feel like I'm getting a lot of relief. I'm not just hauling ass up the hill, but a lot of support, I would say. Starts to make this bike feel even lighter in trail mode. This seems to be kind of the best middle ground if you're still trying to get a good cardio workout, but you want to cover ground quickly. It seems like trail mode is probably the one to be in. You know, I like to point out that everybody's after a different experience. So eco, trail, and turbo suit different people in different situations. It's really the cool thing about these bikes is you can really tailor your experience. Now, just for fun, I'm actually just going to shut the whole bike off. So right now I've got no pedal assist on, and yeah, it's harder to pedal for sure, but you know, if you're in a situation where you ran out of battery, which is very possible because this bike really doesn't have the most capacity, it's not impossible to pedal this bike out. I'm pedaling right now with no assist, and it feels okay. Like, it feels possible. If you were to get stranded out in the trail, you could easily just pedal this bike back. Probably after a while it wouldn't be too enjoyable, but you're just pedaling a, you know, 38-pound bike. And that's kind of the beauty of the SL, is that it is only 38 pounds, which is super manageable for an e-bike. But that's enough of that. Came out here to ride this thing with power, so I'm gonna flick it back on. Eco. Man, Eco feels like turbo after you've been pedaling it with the battery off. Go up the trail. And sometimes you just want to get moving, so let's turn it up to turbo. You immediately need to shift up a couple gears because you're getting so much assist. It's a little rock garden. It really makes short work of the rock gardens. Pretty awesome. Now, I am a regular mountain biker, so when I'm out on these e-bikes, I personally prefer to run it in trail or turbo. Everybody's got an opinion on that, I'm aware, but for me, if I'm mountain biking, I'm on my mountain bike. If I'm riding one of these e-mountain bikes, I kind of want to just cruise. I want to have a different type of ride, and riding it in turbo and trail definitely gives you that different type of ride. Anyways, back to this bike specifically, it just feels really light. It feels super light when you're riding in the higher power mode, but when you're getting around corners and stuff like this, like, the bike just feels nimble. All right, we got a good bit of downhill ahead of us, so let's see what this bike does on the downhills. Feels so light and flickable. Characteristics are light and snappy, flickable. In these corners, just feels so light. Snappy, poppy, just a playful bike. Like, if you blindfolded me and put me on this bike and sent me downhill, I'm not sure I'd be able to tell that I was on an e-bike. Coming up on a pretty steep technical rock garden here. Up out of the saddle. I'm in turbo right now. All right, made it. I wouldn't say it was easy, but yeah, with the turbo assist, definitely doable. So the motor on this bike is smaller than the regular Levo, which is cool, it keeps the weight down, but you know, I do notice that it's a bit louder. I mean, it's not crazy loud, I'm sure you can hear it on the audio here, but it does sound louder than the regular Levo. It's just got that kind of kind of whine to it when you're pedaling. Oh, this is tight in here. Yeah, tight sections, man. You can see this bike being really maneuverable in that stuff. It's slow moving, but easy to manage on this bike. So who's this bike good for? If you're a fan of lightweight mountain bikes, maybe you already have one, maybe you used to have one, you just don't want like a, you know, heavy full-size e-bike, you like the flickability and the lightweight of traditional mountain bikes, then I think it's a great bike for you. Maybe you're not wanting the full power of a full-size e-bike, don't need it, don't want it, then why pedal the heavier one around when you can pedal the light one around? A lot of couples get e-bikes for their spouses so that they can ride together. This is a great candidate for that scenario, because really you're just trying to give your spouse or your friend or family member a little bit of a boost so that maybe they can keep up with the faster rider or riders in the group. That makes this bike a great candidate because it feels, probably sound like a broken record, but it feels like a regular mountain bike. So if you want that feel, you want to keep up with your friends, your spouse, your family members on a ride, don't need the full deal, you just need a little bit of an extra push, and this is a great bike. I could see if you're somebody that's maybe up in age, you want the lightweight nature of the bike, but once again need some extra strength, power from your legs. I think this is a great bike. All those scenarios, that's who I would recommend this bike to. I mean, it really is incredible when you just stop and think how light this bike is, you know? I put it on the scale at 37 3/4 pounds. And I mean, that's just crazy. If you've been around mountain bikes long enough, you can probably remember when one of your bikes weighed about that, if not more. I can think back to some of the older Kona bikes that I used to ride as a trail bike, and they definitely weighed 37 3/4 pounds or more. So, you know, you've got this bike that weighs basically the same, but it's got a freaking motor. It's got 29-inch wheels. It's just so impressive. Just talking about how far the evolution of bikes have come, and we're pretty new in the evolution of electric mountain bikes, but the fact that Specialized has made this SL and figured out a way to make it this light yet still have the benefits of e-assist, it's just incredible. Now in the suspension department, this bike comes with the Fox Elite DPS rear shock and a Fox 34 Performance front fork. A bit of weight savings there, which I'm sure is the reason why Specialized chose to put the Fox 34 and the DPS on this bike. They're a bit lighter, and after all, this bike is the SL, aka super light, so it makes sense why they would do that. I think on 90% of the stuff that I'm riding, like right now, there's plenty enough suspension for this bike. It's just when you get into some of the rockier, chunkier technical sections that the bike starts to feel a little under suspended, in my opinion. But this is a bike comparison, right? So we'll start talking about the other bike pretty soon here, the regular Levo, which has the 36 on it, and talk about the differences there. Now you can put quite some time on this bike before you run out of juice, but if you were going on a much bigger ride and you knew that's what you were doing, Specialized did a really cool thing where they have a extra battery pack that you can add to this bike, and you put it in the water bottle holder, it plugs into the bike, and you can select to either run the batteries separate or you can run them simultaneously, and that gives you a lot more range, which is a pretty cool option if you decided to go with this specific model but didn't want to give up the range of the bigger model. There's that bigger rock garden section here. Oh, yeah, this is where the bike, jeez. Yeah, that's where I wish I had a bigger fork right there. But these sections here, oh, this bike is so light and nimble. It's so fun. All right, so the Levo SL. What an impressive bike. It's amazing how light and nimble this bike feels for having a battery and a motor. But before I talk too much about my thoughts about it, let's get out on the Levo, go ride a little bit on that thing, and then I'll compare both bikes at the end. Here it is, beautiful bike, full-size Levo. Let's ride it. All right, you can immediately tell it's so noticeable how much more power this bike has in turbo mode. I mean, it's just like kind of insane. This is where I have to say that riding e-mountain bikes to me is in a way a different activity, because when you're riding in turbo like this, I mean, it's just crazy the amount of power that this bike's putting out, and it's really fun. I know that everybody's got their own preferences as to how they want to ride the bike, what mode they want to ride it in, but as a mountain biker and a moto rider, when I'm on this bike, I like riding it in turbo. It's just fun. Sure, I'm not getting the same cardio workout that I would be, but that's fine by me because I ride my regular mountain bike regularly. This is different. Makes going uphill fun, and I like that. I'll flip it down to trail. We could try that. Trail feels, as you would expect, a little more moderate. Plenty of power. Like, trail on this bike kind of feels like turbo on the SL. That'd probably be the best way I could describe it. I'll drop it down to eco. Even still, eco is like, feels good. I feel like I'm getting plenty of assist even in eco. Now, the thing I need to point out too is that you can change all of these modes through the Mission Control app. If you want to go in and you can dial how much power you want the bike to receive and how you want to receive it. So If you wanted eco to not have a ton of assist, you could set that up, and then obviously you could turn up turbo all the way so that you're just getting maximum amount of power out of turbo. That's kind of a cool feature that you can just fine tune it and set these modes to how you'd like. Maybe you want eco just to be, you know, your mode where you do get really good cardio. It is very possible to get good cardio workout with these bikes. They're heavy, and if you dial back the power assist, you will work for it. It's definitely a misconception with these bikes that you can't get a workout with an e-bike. You definitely can. Now, I'm gonna just shut it off here, just for the hell of it. And yeah, that's pretty brutal. The bike's off. You can still pedal it. It's possible, but it would be pretty miserable if you had to ride it like this. Oh. All right, enough of that. I'm going back onto turbo. Got to climb here. Oh my God. It's just amazing how much power this thing puts down. You can just absolutely scream uphill. This bike just tracks really well. The bike feels really stable and predictable. I feel like I'm not hopping around as much. And I can plan what the bike's gonna do a bit better. Get through some of this rocky stuff. I really like this bike downhill. I like the extra weight. I like the Fox 36 on it. Bike feels stout and stable. I just know what it's gonna do. Reacts really well. You just get up to speed so fast on these bikes. Makes riding a trail like this so much more fun. Woo! Oh man, this bike's fun. It doesn't have a wallowy kind of feel. It's still really snappy. Now we're in these tight sections. And yep, I would agree the bike does feel heavier for sure, but in almost all areas, I like the extra weight. I think it feels more stable and a little bit more predictable. Like any of this stuff, it's all subjective to who's riding the bike. I don't want to say what standards they have, but maybe what they're used to, what they want the bike to feel like, what they expect the bike to feel like. The weight is mostly coming from that bigger battery, and the battery on this bike has a lot more range than the SL. The cool thing about the SL is you can put that battery extender in the water bottle holder and get a lot more range out of that, but you just get it straight up with this bike, which is pretty cool. Okay, so rolling up to that same technical climb that I did on the SL, that it's pretty difficult. So let's see how full-size Levo handles it. I'm up out of the saddle here. Oh, it's like it's so easy on this bike. Yeah. Yeah, climbing up that on the full-size Levo is quite a bit easier. It's just, as long as you're up and pedaling, which I feel like you need to be out of the saddle for something like that, as long as you keep the pedals moving, it gives you that power feedback and just gets you up that stuff with ease. Still hard, still a punchy section. You're up out of your seat climbing at 9,000 feet, but the Levo makes really short, easy work out of it compared to the Levo SL. Like on the SL, I feel like you feel the extra power without a doubt, but it almost feels like you're just insanely fit and insanely strong. On this, when you're in turbo, it feels like you're riding a motorized vehicle. Like, it doesn't feel natural. I could never replicate that feeling with my own legs. Now, this Levo is, to me, noticeably quieter than the SL. The SL has a little bit more of a whine to it, but even still, this has got to be one of the quietest e-bikes out there in terms of the motor. Now, I'm pretty far out on this trail right now, and that is the beauty of these bikes, is not that you can't get out this far on a regular mountain bike, but it's a lot easier to go further distances. And now that the snow's melted out here in the high country of Colorado, I can go on some really big rides on this bike, get really far back out into the backcountry, and that's just a pretty damn cool experience. Tight section here. Easy. So with this Levo, you get the Fox DPS Performance rear shock, and you get a Fox 36 Performance front fork. They both feel really good for this bike. I'd like to try a beefier shock. I'd like to run a coil shock on this bike and see how that feels. But I'm really happy with the Fox 36 on this bike. Definitely makes the bike feel more stout, and you need that extra heft just due to the extra weight of this bike. It feels really well suspended. Even when you get in some of the rockier, rougher stuff, it still feels really good. But yeah, it's a good pairing for this bike. Who do I think this bike is good for? I'd say pretty much everybody, really. I mean, I talked about riding with your spouse earlier, and if your spouse wanted to ride with you but wasn't at the same endurance level that you might be, I think this is a great bike, because you can really just change those power modes. Say your spouse gets faster, and you can just dial up the tempo on this bike a bit to match the speed of the other rider. So there's a bit more, I say, like expandability out of the bike. You can just get a lot more out of it, and if you choose to, you can get just as little out of it. The thing about the Levo SL is that I would not recommend it for those that are gonna ride with other regular e-bikes, unless you on the regular SL are crazy fit, because I've done a few rides with some friends. I've been on the SL, they've been on this regular size Levo, and if we're both trying to rally along in turbo mode, you get absolutely dropped on the Levo SL if you're of even relative similar abilities in climbing. So I think this bike is also good for spouses and family members and friends. I think it's great for those that need a bit more assist and want that extra power. I think it's great for people like me, who I consider myself to be very fit, but I like riding e-bikes for a different reason. I like climbing really fast on them and covering a lot of ground and going for big rides. And you can do that on this bike really, really well. So if I'm trying to get an experience that's as close to mountain biking as absolutely possible without riding a traditional mountain bike, then sure, the Levo SL is closer to a regular mountain bike than this is. But if you're not so concerned with replicating the experience of a mountain bike, then I would more so go for this bike. This bike just like turns the flat and uphill sections into fun rideable sections. Can't quite say that for the SL. SL makes the ride easier, but it doesn't just like give you this boost of power that makes the uphills fun like this bike does. And on these sections that are generally really fun but a little bit slow moving because you have a variance in momentum, this bike helps you keep your momentum up so that it's a kind of a continuous, enjoyable riding session. Just such a fun bike to ride downhill. Here's a real technical section here. Fox 36 doing its job. Oh man, yeah, this bike just eats it up compared to the SL. That extra weight, that beefier suspension, no problems. Yeah, this bike still feels so lively and snappy.
So to sum things up, the Levo SL, a super light bike, it feels very reminiscent of a regular mountain bike. If you like that light, snappy feel, if you're not used to maybe riding heavier bikes or motorcycles, I think this is a great option for you. If you just love the traditional feel of a mountain bike, then another great option for you. If you're maybe have a spouse or a friend or a family member that is not quite of the skill level or athletic ability, I think that this bike will suit their needs if they want to ride with a group that might be a little bit faster than them and still have that traditional mountain bike feel. It comes with the Fox 34, which is a very obvious option for keeping this bike light, but in terms of how it rides, I would prefer putting a bit more beefier fork on it like a Fox 36. I run a Fox 36 on my normal mountain bike with no motor or battery, so it's no surprise that I would prefer having a bit more fork up front on this bike. I think the rear shock's actually really good. I'd love to try it with a coil. Overall, just a really impressive electric mountain bike in that weight. And moving over to the Levo, obviously a bit heavier, a lot more range, very similar in ergonomics, but it rides a lot different. I think the bike feels really stable and planted because of that extra weight. I don't feel like I'm getting into any points where when the trail gets tight and narrow that this bike is too much to handle. I feel really fine on it.
Maybe it's because I ride dirt bikes a lot that this bike still feels really light to me, but personally, I'm not bothered by the weight of this bike. I like that it's got the Fox 36 up front. That's another reason why the bike feels really stable to me, especially through some of the chunkier stuff. And if it were me, if I had to pick one of these bikes, I would personally go with the full-size Levo, because when I'm riding electric mountain bikes, I'm after a different experience than I would be on my normal mountain bike, which is something that I also regularly do. So when I'm on an e-mountain bike, I want to be riding an e-mountain bike, and I'll be straight up with you. I love riding these bikes in turbo and trail mode. I like just getting that extra amount of power. I think it's really fun to ride. I'm riding on moto trails, so there's no worries about like tearing up the trail or anything like that. So I just have more fun riding these bikes at a higher power mode. And when you're riding this bike in a high power mode versus this bike, the amount of power that you're putting down is very noticeable. It's like, I would say that trail mode or eco mode on this bike feels like turbo on this bike. So it really feels like you're riding a bike with a motor on this bike. So if you want to have the experience on this bike where you're pedaling really hard, getting a really good cardio workout, you can tailor the power mode in the Mission Control app to have that. And on the flip side, if you just want to haul ass on this bike and cover a lot of ground, you can do that too. And I like that kind of expandability of this bike. I just don't feel like I'm giving anything up on the full-size Levo. I don't mind the extra weight. I'm out here to ride an e-bike, so I want one that's going to be powerful and have a lot of range. So the biggest thing that I have to repeat is that everybody's out here for a different reason and wants a different experience. Just because I want a certain thing out of my bikes doesn't mean that that also applies to you. I would just hope that you would take all the information that I talk about and make the best decision for yourself. I'd love to hear what you guys think of electric mountain bikes on this YouTube channel. Please leave me a note in the comment section. Let me know what you're liking, what you're not liking. I always appreciate the feedback, and thanks as always for watching, guys.